Should you get home?
It was a night of binge drinking and partying that was about to lead to disaster and scandal at the home of Stephen Ribagliati, a star infielder on the baseball team at De Anza Community College in the Silicon Valley. Liquor was flowing freely, and an intoxicated 17-year-old high school girl was now in a room on her back, surrounded by a group of ball players.
We grab the handle, and the three of us throw our bodies and push against the door.
3 determined soccer players were on a mission to rescue her.
We start yelling and swearing, and the door pops open.
As the guys casually left the room, she says, they raced to the helpless girl.
She had her pants clearly ripped off of her.
Ripped off, not just taken off?
No, they were not taken off. And her body was very graphic. It was clearly not consensual.
No girl would ever consent to how we found her.
Her panties were wrapped around one ankle, and it was just like, it was disgusting. It was very demeaning and very degrading.
Were you just worried about her sobriety, or were you also worried about an assault that had happened?
We were worried about both.
We already knew that a sexual assault happened on her. We just wanted her to be able to live through it.
19-year-old April Groley, studying to be a nurse, feared the worst.
I've seen how people act with alcohol poisoning, and the way she was acting was like that, but times 10.
Convinced that the half-naked girl was in danger, they jumped into action.
When we first found her, she was unconscious.
She had vomit streaming from the side of her face.
Both of them scooped vomit out of her mouth, and that's when she was able to finally say, I'm sorry.
What does she mean, I'm sorry?
We had no idea.
Investigators would later reveal that the vomit found on the teen was not her own. But before that and other appalling details would come to light, her young rescuers struggled to get her to an emergency room.
We literally had to lift her and carry her out.
Her feet were dragging on the floor. It was dead weight.
Then, Chief says, pitcher Scott Rigetti added this remark.
The guy who was holding the door back from us said, "This bitch got drunk and did it to herself."
Sometime after 1 a.m., they would make it to the nearest hospital, where authorities were called. Laurie Smith, the tough, outspoken sheriff of Santa Clara County, would head the case.
We did hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of investigation in actually a very short period of time. We talked to as many of the people that were present at the party as we could.
How challenging was this in the beginning to try to unravel?
Well, I think the real challenging part was the fact that the victim had no memory of it.
No memory, Sheriff Smith suspects, because of the girl's heavy drinking that night.
The young women who went in and I keep saying rescued the victim out of the room, they had a lot of memory about what happened, but they only saw a short period of time of the incident.
And for Sheriff Smith, that would make for a difficult investigation. She believed that rape was likely, but proving it was another matter.
The young men that were in the room virtually didn't tell us anything.
The ball players who admitted to their coach that they were in the room were immediately suspended from the team for violating the school's code of conduct. Among them was Stephen Ribagliati, who threw the party, and pitcher Scott Rigetti, nephew of former major leaguer Dave Rigetti.
The investigation was frustrating to me. I think there probably was a code of silence. They hung together. They didn't provide us with the information that we needed.
So there was no clear-cut story on what happened to the 17-year-old girl, other than her serious intoxication.
Well, she had to have been drinking a lot because we estimate her blood alcohol level at the time of the rape to be a 0.32. That's nearly a lethal level.
Wow. Alcohol poisoning.
Alcohol poisoning, death. One of the young women, and I think it was April, put their fingers down the victim's throat and got her to vomit. Who knows what her blood alcohol level would have been had April not had the sense to know that she was in risk.
How much did she have to drink to get to that level?
Well, she had to have 15 to 17 drinks. A lot of drinks, short period of time.
Is it possible that she could have consented to sex with the blood alcohol level that high?
Can you really consent if you're 17 years old and if your blood alcohol level is a 0.32. I don't think so. That's why I believe that a crime occurred.
The case soon sparked local outrage, branding the young men pariahs within their own community. At the center of the investigation, this girl, a high school softball player who's never spoken publicly nor been identified. Months after that terrible night, she agreed to meet with 2020 producers, later inviting us to one of her games. Emerging from a haze of depression and anxiety, she told us she had no memory of what she feels certain was a rape. She does recall drinking several shots, including one she says was poured from a different bottle. And she remembers sharing a drink with a ball player. The rest is a blur. For days after the ordeal, she would sit alone in a darkened apartment, afraid to leave. Katie Crum was the girl's former English teacher.
She really wanted to have a better life, and she knew college was her ticket, so she really wanted to get a softball scholarship to ensure that she would get there.
Crum remembers a shy teenager who was determined to improve her grades.
I would never describe her as a wild child or a wild kid or any kind of student that would get in trouble ever.
Investigators thought they had a strong case of rape. An intoxicated teen under the age of consent, college athletes in a frat boy atmosphere, and 3 solid eyewitnesses. It was now all in the hands of prosecutors. Then, 2 months later, a bombshell. Dolores Carr, Santa Clara's district attorney, decides not to file any charges.
The way the case stands now, it's impossible to file charges and hope to get a conviction in this case.
It felt like my heart had been ripped out, and all we could do was just cry, and we cried so hard that we couldn't even breathe. There were 3 people who watched something happen, and like, if that's not enough, then, you know, why is rape even a crime?
When we come back, as awful as this is, did this young woman put herself in a dangerous position by drinking so heavily that night?
Oh, that's a terrible question to ask.
Next, the boys strike back. Stay with us.
When 2020